The Democratic National Convention was a stage set not only for unity and vision, but also for a relentless barrage of attacks against President Donald Trump. As expected, Trump, never one to shy away from a fight, responded with characteristic fervor. From the moment the first criticisms left the lips of DNC speakers, Trump's annoyance was palpable. His Twitter feed, a notorious platform for his unfiltered thoughts, became a battleground of retorts and counter-accusations. The DNC, intended to galvanize support for the Democratic nominee, seemed to have inadvertently lit a fire under Trump, fueling his determination to hit back harder. The question on everyone's mind: would Trump maintain his focus on policy and his achievements, or would he get bogged down in a tit-for-tat exchange with his detractors? While some advisors urged Trump to rise above the fray and concentrate on his policy agenda, the president appeared more inclined to indulge in personal attacks. He seemed particularly irked by criticisms leveled at his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economy, two areas where he had staked his re-election bid. Rallies, always a source of energy for Trump, transformed into platforms for launching fiery diatribes against his Democratic rivals. He accused them of being out of touch, radical, and even un-American. Trump's rhetoric, often bordering on the inflammatory, seemed designed to fire up his base and deflect attention from the issues raised at the DNC. However, this approach carried significant risks, potentially alienating moderate voters and reinforcing the very image of impulsiveness and recklessness that his opponents sought to portray. Trump's response to the DNC attacks was classic Trump: loud, aggressive, and unapologetically personal. Twitter became his weapon of choice, firing off a barrage of tweets denouncing the DNC as fake news and a witch hunt. He mocked specific speakers, often resorting to personal insults and derogatory nicknames. His rallies, already known for their fervent atmosphere, took on an even more charged tone. Trump used these events to rail against the radical left, painting a dystopian picture of America under Democratic rule. He accused his opponents of wanting to destroy the country, and portrayed himself as the only one standing in their way. This strategy, while undoubtedly appealing to his base, did little to broaden his appeal or address the concerns of undecided voters. Section 4. Derailed by Democrats? Trump struggled to stay on message. The DNC presented a challenge for Trump: how to respond to a coordinated attack without getting sidetracked from his own message. It was a delicate balancing act, and one that Trump, prone to impulsiveness and counterpunching, often struggled to maintain. While his campaign sought to highlight his accomplishments and policy agenda, Trump seemed more preoccupied with settling scores and hitting back at his critics. This constant need to respond, often in an inflammatory and personal manner, risked overshadowing his own message and reinforcing the very narratives that the Democrats were pushing. The more he engaged in these skirmishes, the less time he spent discussing his vision for the future and addressing the concerns of voters. This dynamic raised a crucial question: could Trump pivot from a campaign defined by grievance and resentment to one focused on hope and optimism, or would he remain trapped in a cycle of attack and counterattack? Section 5. The Price of Passion. Can Trump's strategy win him the election? Trump's instinctive response to the DNC attacks was to fight fire with fire. This approach, while emotionally satisfying in the moment, carried significant strategic risks. By allowing himself to be drawn into a constant back and forth with his critics, he risked losing sight of the bigger picture, persuading undecided voters, and offering a positive vision for the future. Moreover, his reliance on personal attacks and divisive rhetoric further polarized the electorate, making it more difficult to bridge the partisan divide. While this strategy might energize his base, it did little to attract moderate or independent voters, who often decided the outcome of elections. The question remained: could Trump channel his passion and energy into a more disciplined and effective message, or would his reactive and often self-destructive tendencies ultimately cost him the election? Section 6. The Verdict: Trump's response, masterstroke or meltdown. Trump's response to the DNC attacks was a microcosm of his presidency: instinctive, aggressive, and often self-defeating. While his supporters applauded his willingness to fight back against what they perceived as unfair attacks, critics argued that his behavior was unbecoming of a president and ultimately counterproductive. The DNC presented an opportunity for Trump to articulate his vision for the future and draw a sharp contrast with his opponents. However, by succumbing to his worst impulses and engaging in petty squabbles, he squandered this opportunity and reinforced the very narratives that the Democrats were seeking to promote. Only time will tell whether Trump's scorched earth response to the DNC will prove to be a shrewd political calculation or a fatal miscalculation. One thing is certain, his presidency and his legacy will be forever marked by his inability to resist a fight, even when doing so came at the expense of his own best interests.